Welcome. On our bench today we have this rather beautiful Elgin pocket watch. And this is now a family heirloom. It belongs to my brother-in-law, who is currently touring around the United States. I think he's heading down the Mississippi River right now. And while he's away, I'm hoping to get this serviced for him. It's a railroad grade watch. And I looked it up. Production year is 1912. And this is a 21 jewel watch. Let's see if we can open it. Clearly it's working. But when I tried to wind it, it was certainly a bit scraunchy. So we'll need to look at the winding side of this. Look at that. Lovely damaskeening. This is a Father Time, which is one of the top grade Elgin pocket watches for railroad use. Very pretty, isn't it, with gold settings. It looks very nice. But let's get it on the time grapher and see how good the timekeeping is. Well, from a rate standpoint, this is really pretty good. In the day, these watches would work at 2 or 3 seconds per day. But given this is 100 years old, we don't know when it was last serviced. But this pattern here is mixed. We have a decent enough amplitude at over 200 degrees. I'm okay with that. This needs correction though. The beat error should be nearer 1 millisecond. And we've definitely got some variability going on here. So let's see what it's like after a service. But this is a pretty good starting point, I think. Let's just have a look under the scope here and have a look around, see what we're dealing with. I see we have a few hairs. Let's see if I can just get rid of that one. There we go. Temperature compensated balance wheel. We can see the two metals working together. These are all gold setting screw down jewels. Actually looks in really nice condition. This is a micrometer adjustment, which is a part of the railroad grade requirement. Just want to see if we can get a good look at the regulator. I'm going to make an adjustment here. I'm looking at these two pins. Yeah, as I thought. So the regulator pins have got the hairspring pinched, and we'll need to make an adjustment there. The regulator spring should, or the hairspring should really be loose and moving against, just a heartbeat against those two regulator pins. But that's an easy fix. Let's keep looking around. I think that's a gold center wheel. I see another hair there. We'll take care of that during the service. Adjusted for 5 positions, probably includes temperature and isochronism. Very nice. A Father Time. Elgin, Illinois. I wonder how close my brother-in-law is to the old factory. So let's start by letting down this mainspring. There's a clicker on the ratchet wheel here that will just open up carefully. I'm going to hold this back like so, and then see if we can just let this mainspring down. There we go. All right. To get the movement out, we'll need to open up this front bezel. This will give us a chance to inspect the dial and condition of the hands, which look really nice. They're all in blued steel. And perhaps I can, just get some light on there to show you. And this dial is very nice. I don't see any cracks in the enamel at all. Lovely. And as a railroad pocket watch, it would have had a lever set here for the, if I can just pull this out, in order for us to change the time. And let's see if that mechanism is working. There's something else to look at, so our lever set. Oh, just a little sticky perhaps, but that's working. I think after a service that should be fine. Okay, let's turn this over and we'll get the movement out of the case and take a closer look at it. Yes, you see that lever doesn't really want to go back very nicely. Alright. Just before we go any further, we'll remove these hands and put them away for safekeeping. Just using this piece of plastic here to protect them. This bluing of the steel is done by heat, just applying a certain amount of heat for a limited time. Allows us to get this level of bluing on the hands. There we go. One more, the minute hand. This little membrane box will just protect our hands. Well, let's see if we can get the case and movement separated. I've got some case screws just here. A little dirty. These screws look in nice condition. We expect the movement to come out forwards, which it does. Loving this case, very nice. We have some dial screws. Just going to loosen these and see if we can get our dial out. I'll put that into a dial case so that we keep it protected while we're working on the watch. Okay. Look at that. Lovely. We have a small spring washer for the dial. The hour wheel. And I'll use my cannon pinion remover to take the cannon pinion out. And this allows us to work now on both sides of the watch. I'm not quite sure what's happening here with the setting lever. This is an English setting lever and I can feel some spring tension, but there's nothing that would be allowing it to spring back. This is its closed position. We'll need to take a look at that. It looks like it's related to this crown position. And I see the pins here on the clutch. We have a screw missing just here. There's also a broken screw on this dual setting. If I don't need to remove it, I'll leave it as it is. But that should be taken care of. Let's just remove this setting lever here and see if we can work out what's going on with it. So this is the spring here underneath that is pushing the lever out, and then I think the small spring at the top there is the return spring, and that's operating the yoke on the clutch, and I think that's the area of trouble that we need to look a little bit more closely at. Anyway, we'll take these out and oil them up and see if that makes a difference for us. I also want to find that extra screw there that's missing and see if we can get that replaced, because when we were trying to wind the pocket watch up, I was getting that scraunchy feeling here, and I'm wondering if this gear might be related to that. I mean, obviously it's not getting set in place or set down, although that gear is really for setting the hands, so I'm not convinced that's our issue, but we'll get that missing screw replaced anyway. Just turn over the movement and we can remove the balance complete. Just need to be extra careful with this part. That hairspring is the most delicate piece on the movement. and we'll inspect that later. But for now I just want to see if we've got some wind on the mainspring. This pallet fork here should just sit nicely in the center here, and we've got a little bit of wind still on this. If I don't remove this and continue on with the disassembly, we could have parts flying everywhere. So that's set nicely, and we'll soon find out. I just need to remove this part here, and yeah, it seems we're okay. This is the pallet fork coming out now. There's some jewels on there that we'll inspect as well. So now, to get to the train of wheels, I need to start removing these bridges. This one's holding the third wheel and the fourth wheel. And I'm going to need to remove those jewel settings on the top there and underneath to re-oil those jewels. But we'll put this bridge aside for now and take care of that in a little bit. Actually, this is the fourth wheel here and the escape wheel. And to get this bridge out, I'm going to need to really disassemble the clicker and the two large wheels. This clicker is what you hear when the watch is being wound up. There's a little spring return underneath here. And I just need to take care that we don't lose these tiny parts, and especially the springs, which have a habit of disappearing. And these two wheels are the crown wheel being reverse thread here, so that it doesn't loosen when we wind the watch. Very pretty damaskeening on the surface of these. They've been nicely finished. And then the larger of the two wheels, the ratchet wheel, which sits on top of our mainspring barrel. We can get to that once we take the bridge plate off. I think we're just about ready to do that now. These screws are out. And I should just be able to, one more. Okay, so let's see if we can just lift the bridge, yes. That's great, gives us access to these last remaining gears. This one's a gold surface, at least on the top there. Our mainspring barrel. We'll need to get into there a little bit later and have a look at the mainspring. And our third wheel. We're getting quite close now. This assembly here is for the winding and setting. And that will need to come apart for cleaning. We'll inspect this bridge plate and have a good look at it, but it's all stripped down now and ready to be cleaned and inspected. We have some old oils and grease here, just looking at these jewels, and a few things that shouldn't be here on the movement. These old hairs don't help us. I want to make sure that none of these jewels have any damage or cracks or ovaling. That one looks a little bit suspect. I think what we'll do is we'll get that one cleaned up and take a very good close look at it. But the rest of it looks pretty good. I think what we'll do is start putting everything into the cleaner. We'll use these small baskets. And I'll give the case a little bit of work as well. I want to just adjust this hoop because it's loose, and I'm using this special antique tool here just to reshape it slightly, and the brass top is protected. That's much better. Our plate's out of the cleaner now, and these jewels are looking so much better. Yeah, I'm not seeing any cracks, and maybe a small scratch on that, but that's fine. Yeah, those are all good. That's good news, and no jewels to replace, which is a relief, at least on the base plate. Let's have a look at these wheels now, out of the cleaner as well. Just get rid of that little hair. There we go. And it's important to inspect these pivot ends. Just get that in focus. They're pretty good. Do a little bit of a burnish potentially, but these are not in bad shape. One more here. And let's just pop this cap off for the mainspring barrel. This looks like an original mainspring. That grease is quite old though. So let's take the mainspring out and inspect it more closely, and also this gives us a chance to get rid of that old grease and put some fresh in place. Yeah, definitely an old style blue spring. Could be original. And I'll clean this up. It's already been in our ultrasonic cleaner, but we still have some markings, possibly for some wear or some very old grease. I'm going to use this vintage K&D mainspring winder. Just want to make sure that we've got the right mainspring size here. That goes into the barrel just nicely. So this one will work. I just need the winder. I've cleaned the mainspring already. I just want to put a really thin layer of Mobius D5 light grease onto this spring. Not too much. I'm just going to wind this carefully into this barrel. I'm just loosening this the other way so I can pull this winding mechanism out from the spring. And there it is, ready to go into our movement barrel. I just need to line it up correctly. And then we can pop it in. And this arbor has a small catch on it. I just need to make sure that the end of the spring is set correctly for that. And we'll just finish with a little drop of D5 on the edges here, not too much. I think that's fine. And just finish with a small amount on the bottom of the barrel. And we can replace our cap. I'll use a special tool for this. And we can put this away for safekeeping. This dial was really clean when I took it out of the movement, but let's just see if we can get any last residues off, and we'll use this special solution. Okay, a denture tab. I also wanted to look at this balance, and in particular these regulator pins. They were pinching this hairspring, so we'll remove the hairspring by dropping this stud out at the top. The screw is quite loose. I'm going to take the jewel out first of all, because we'll need to clean and oil this in any respect. So this is a gold setting jewel, but actually it's in two parts, and we're looking at a cap jewel, and then underneath that is a hole jewel, and that's where the pivot for the balance staff goes. These screws are different sizes, that's kind of interesting. I need to use my jeweler here just to push this pair of jewels out. There we are. You can see the difference in the materials. That's the gold one, and then brass or combination for the lower jewel. Now, this isn't cleaned yet, but I just wanted to look at the pivots, and we'll need to pull this apart. So we'll take the hairspring off first, to be very careful with this. I want to separate these two regulator pins. You can see the one on the right actually is pushed in slightly, and that's causing that clamping down on the hairspring, and we want the hairspring to beat nice and evenly between these two regulator pins. So I'm just going to separate these and give our hairspring a good clean. This is a product called One Dip, which is a quite strong solvent used specially for that purpose. Just working through these base plate jewels now. I'll need to separate these as well. Give them a good clean and get them re-oiled. These are cleaned now. I'll put the whole jewel in first. And then we need to put the tiniest drop of oil onto this jewel, maybe a little bit more. Try to be careful here not to touch the jewel either. And we need about half to 2/3 of the jewel width filled with oil, and it will just hang there underneath. I'll put these screws back in place. And just recalling here that this one on the left is slightly smaller, and I just want to make sure that that is gripping this jewel correctly. We definitely don't want that to be loose. If it is, we'll need to change it. Now I want to check the balance wheel, and I'm going to use this device here just to spin the wheel and see if there are any heavy spots. Check the impulse jewel, make sure that that's not loose. And I did find a few hairs here that just need to be removed. These are all solid gold, these weights on the outside. It's very pretty. And inspecting the hairspring, this looks in really good condition. The correct shape. So we've got this cleaned, and we'll put this back in place on top of the balance wheel. This is just a friction fit. I did need to use my staking set here to seat it correctly, but once that was done, we can put this stud back in place. And the screw that's holding this stud was quite loose when we undid it. In fact, I wasn't totally happy when we put that back together, and I did put a little bit of product on there just to make sure that it grips okay, but again, that's a candidate for replacement if there's a problem downstream. I'm just working through these jewels now. It's so tiny, each of these screws. I'm using my smallest screwdriver, 1/2 millimeter, to undo them and do them up. And we've got these lovely gold setting jewels on the top plates, of course, for show. And get these pushed out as well. My pusher looks a little bit too wide for that jewel, so we'll come back to that in a second. But this one's okay. And that one's a single hole jewel. Just change the pusher now a couple of sizes down, and we can get this one done as well. Under the microscope, these jewels all look good. I see a small amount of pivot damage on this one here, but it's not affected the jewels, so we can reuse these. Everything's been dismantled and cleaned. Just an opportunity to take stock of where we are, and in no particular order. The issues that were identified was we had a kind of scraunchy wind going on from the crown over here, which operates through this clutch, and I'm hopeful that with some oils that's going to clear up. This setting lever here was inoperative, and there's a spring bar just like this one, which I think is worn out. We'll try it with some grease, but I think we might need to replace one of these springs here. There's a broken screw head that was on this faceplate. That's this tiny little guy here. Probably need to replace that. The jewel is back in place. All of these jewels have been oiled, all the cap jewels. We did have a missing screw for the setting cover plate, which is this plate here. So this was just held in by one screw. So we need to find a replacement so that we can get both sides secured. That might also have caused some of the scraunchiness with the winding mechanism, since this plate was not secured down. There's a balance stud screw not holding, which is this guy right here, and I'm wondering if this is the right screw to hold the stud in place. We'll have a closer look at that and perhaps see if we can find a replacement so that we can get this balance back together. The pallet fork jewel, screw on the dial side is turning. That can't be seen here, but we'll look into that. There's a loose hoop on this case here. This case has come up beautifully. That has been addressed, so that hoop is now correct, just stiff enough to turn. Fourth wheel bridge plate screw loose. So that's this bridge plate here, and that's one of these tiny screws holding one of these gold jewels, gold cap jewels in place. And that was just turning out. It might need a closer look. And I did find a small scratch in the crystal just here. That was it. Everything came up nice. And these gold wheels are all in good shape. Well, this is a gold one, the center wheel. I've re-oiled the mainspring in here. We're going to reuse the mainspring. It looked okay, so we'll keep that in place. And all this damaskeening and plates, they all came up really good. And this dial here is exceptional. So that was nice to see. After taking it out of the cleaner, I think I got a little bit of dust there, which we'll get rid of. But we are ready to rebuild our movement. We'll start with our winding and setting arbor. I'm putting a little heavier grease on this. This is called a Mobius 9501. We'll get this back together with the clutch. And we can put this mainspring barrel in and our first pair of wheels. Get the bridge plate in place. These did come out really nicely. Look pristine. I just want to check that those wheels are operating before I continue the build with the ratchet wheel. And the crown wheel. Just put a little bit more of this grease in place. And the click spring. We have the fourth wheel and escape wheel here for this bridge plate. That's all been cleaned, and each of those jewels have already been oiled. I'm very careful in setting this and also making sure that We have smooth transmission of power all the way through here to our pallet fork. And once this is in place, we can actually put some wind on the watch, and I'll just do that gently with my finger here to make sure that the pallet fork is just snapping between the banking pins. That's good. And just with a close inspection here of those jewels on the pallet fork, I can see they're just catching the escape wheel. We'll put a little grease on those too. And now for the big moment, we can return our balance back into the movement and see if she will come back alive. I'll just try and seat this down first. I've just got to engage that impulse jewel correctly into the pallet fork. Nope. No, not quite. I don't think I've quite got that engaged correctly. So let's try that again. I'll come in from the other side. Since our pallet fork is set closest to us, I just want to come in at a slight angle and get our balance wheel engaged. The jewel you can just about see underneath. We'll try that. Ah. Is she going to go? Yes! Oh, look at that. Isn't that fantastic? Alive again. Very nice to see. So we'll just get the balance secured, and then we can turn the movement over and work on the other side. Just want to put a little grease here where this yoke sits in against the clutch mechanism. And I still want to look at that spring return. For this, I think we'll need to secure one of those to make sure that that springs back. And this cover plate here, we only have the one screw for. So I'm building up a parts list. I need one there. And this spring is pushing our lever out. And this part seemed okay. So we can put our setting lever back in place. And before we put the dial back, I just want to add a little oil and a slightly heavier grease here for the cannon pinion. Just put the dial washer back and we're ready for our dial. No, wait a minute. Not quite ready. We do need to address those issues on the dial side. And we have our donor movement that's just arrived. I'm hoping we can recover the parts we need from this. It's actually a slightly different movement number, an Elgin 454, which is different to the father time, but this one, according to the Pocket Watch database, has identical parts, at least for the ones we need, which is the clutch return spring and some screws. But the only way to find out here is to move the dial and just see what's underneath. It does look very similar in design. This is a B.W. Raymond model as opposed to a Father Time. So let's get under here and hopefully we've got what we need. Oh, still a little bit of heartbeat on this one. Oh, there it is, the clutch return spring, and that's exactly the one that we need. We'll also need the screw for this minute wheel plate. That was missing on our movement. The clutch return spring. And there was also a jewel that had a broken screw. I see there's one screw missing right here on this one as well. So we'll take a screw at the back here. I don't know how I was managed to get broken. Perhaps it was too tight, and obviously these watches are over 100 years old and quite delicate. So back to our movement, we'll replace that jewel screw first of all. I think our screwdriver here is a little bit too large. I might just go down one size, get a better grip on that. That's good. And the minute wheel plate. I don't know yet if this is what was causing some of our winding issues. I doubt it, but I'd rather have that replaced. And then our clutch return spring. For sure this was the culprit that was causing an issue with the lever set not returning correctly. But we'll soon find out once I get this tricky screw in place. That really is a tiny screw. And we'll just hold down that spring. Make sure it doesn't ping away. And that's it. Check the lever. Perfect. Now we can reseat the dial. These pliers are made of a Delran product for kind of a medium hard plastic that just protects the dial, stops us scratching it hopefully, and we can work on these hands. I'll set everything to 12 o'clock. And get those lined up. And I'm using a hands presser here to secure those down. And we can put our second hand back. This sits on the pivot that's on the end of the fourth wheel. Now we can recase it. Just need to sit the crown staff in correctly into the movement. There we go. And I will put this top bezel on just loosely so that we can secure the movement on the other side. We have these two screws here that just hold the movement in place. The watch is looking gorgeous. I just need to finish with some oil on these pivots. Maybe a little bit too much there. We'll just use Rodico putty here to remove some of that. And it's a lighter oil on these pivots. Yeah, it's looking amazing. Let's replace this back cover and we can get the watch onto our time grapher and see where we're at. And this is a significant improvement. We're now at -3 seconds per day. Lovely straight lines there. That just shows that beat error of 4 milliseconds between our two lines, which is an improvement. 310 degrees of amplitude is amazing. It'd be nice to see this nearer 1 millisecond, but this is much better than it was. Yes, I'm very pleased with that. And so, we've come to the end of our journey. Thank you for joining me in the restoration process for this very beautiful 1912, over 100 years old, Elgin railroad pocket watch. I'll just leave you to enjoy it.